The Scars of Eden by Paul Wallace. Has humanity confused the idea of God with memories of ET contact? Let's find out. Chapter 1. What happened to Paul? Bath, England, 1985. I know what it is to be asleep, and I know what it is to be awake. Right now, I am wide awake. I know exactly where I am and can see clearly what time it is. It is 2 a.m. The glow from the street light outside and an open gable window with the curtains drawn back mean that everything in my room is clearly lit. I just can't explain what I'm seeing. I live alone in a top-floor apartment in a chocolate box village on the outskirts of Bath. Being on my own in my apartment has never worried or unnerved me. I am not a fearful person. I love my independence. In fact, at this time of the night, I am usually out on my own, exploring the dark hillsides and the beautiful open spaces of Bath Golf Club, deep breathing in the moist midnight air. Usually, I return home around 1:30 a.m. for a warming nightcap and finally climb into bed around 2 a.m. That's my routine. Being out and on my own in the middle of the night doesn't worry me in the least. Why would it? I am 20 years old. I'm indestructible. For a good night's sleep, I leave my curtains open and the window ajar to permit a good draught of fresh air. Thanks to the well-positioned streetlight, the open window always bathes my bedroom in a soft light. But tonight, in the warm orange glow, something is moving, and I don't understand what I'm looking at. I can see 5 things just beyond the end of my double bed. They are standing side by side between the foot of my bed and the gable window. The figures are short, gray, almost translucent, and moving just enough to show me that they are alive. But they are not human. Knowing my voice will fail me, I hiss at them in a whisper. In the name of Jesus, get out. I am 20 years old, but I have pulled the bed covers over me like a 2-year-old, and I'm shaking like a leaf. Suddenly, I am not indestructible. I am terrified. Canberra, Australia, 2020. I have just stripped off for a shower when the bouncing tones of Skype panic me up the stairs in my bath towel. I really don't have time for an interruption right now. I'm going to be on the air in a matter of minutes, and I need to be ready. Why is the call coming through now, when the interview isn't due for another half hour? Dripping and out of breath, I pick up. Joining us live all the way from Canberra, Australia, is Paul Anthony Wallace, researcher of world mythologies and author of the controversial new book, Escaping from Eden. Paul, welcome to Zone 51. How are you today? I do my best to slow my breathing and try and sound smooth and collected. Thanks, Tim and Jay. It's great to be with you today. Imagine his English accent. I don't have that. I had in mind we were going to be talking in about half an hour. Yes, they laugh. The clock's changing has thrown everybody out. So, Paul, your book is stirring up quite a hornet's nest of debate. Yet a couple of years back, you were a regular pastor going about your work in the church. In fact, you were a senior churchman, an archdeacon. What got you caught up in world mythologies and ancient aliens? I sit at the end of my bed, wrapped in my towel, and thank my lucky stars this interview is audio only. We're quickly going to get into some deep territory, and all my notes are waiting for me in the other room. Can I get through a 2-hour interview without my notes? Is my middle-aged mind up to the challenge? I feel I've been fumbling more for my words lately, starting a sentence and then having to work hard to make it coherently to the end. I'm guessing 3 kids and not enough sleep can do that to you. I really don't want foggy memory to let my subject matter down, and I'm feeling vulnerable sitting in my towel without my notes at hand. But it's not the first time I've been asked, and it is all about my own journey. It's about a sequence of discoveries that have upended my career, put my reputation on the line, and changed the whole direction of my life. It is my own story. I can simply tell that. And so we begin. We laughed about how an ultimate frisbee injury laid me up for weeks on end and gave me the time to get into some study while locked down in the shipping crate cabin at the end of my driveway. We talk about how I have been waiting for years to drill down into some of the logical and more problems within the familiar stories of beginnings to be found in the book of Genesis. Anyone who has read those stories would know the kind of thing I mean. So I run through the clues in the Genesis story which point to an even older narrative hidden in plain sight within the text. So I run through the clues in the Genesis story which point to an even older narrative hidden in plain sight within the text. Next, I walk Tim and Jay through the translation issues around various key words and show that the word the Bible often translates as God is really much better translated as powerful ones. I explain. As soon as you make the translation switch, the familiar stories of Genesis quickly reveal themselves for what they really are. They are the summary form of an even older body of stories, the Mesopotamian narratives of the ancient Sumerians, Babylonians, Akkadians, and Assyrians. And those stories are not about God. They're about our distant ancestors bumping up against visitors from another planet, sky people, extraterrestrial visitors who came and colonized our planet and interfered in our evolution to make us a more useful workforce. I am now shivering under the cold of the aircon, having sat myself right under the vent. I try to steady my voice by talking louder. I don't want to come across all anxious and nervous when in reality I'm simply going into thermal shock. Paul, after 2,000 years of Christianity and more than 3,000 years of Judaism, how likely is it that out of the blue, some random Australian researcher, yourself of course, could come along and say, "Hey everyone, you've got this all wrong. I've got it worked out. The Bible isn't really about God at all. It's all about aliens." How credible is that? This is a question I am ready for, and as I jump into it, I can feel my energy rising. Well, Tim, if I really were the first person to make these claims, then yes, you would be quite right to raise an eyebrow or two. In reality, I'm not the first. If you go back to the very early days of Christianity, you will find some very significant church fathers who were totally comfortable with the explanation of human origins that I am putting forward in Escaping from Eden. I'm talking about people like Justin Martyr, Clement of Alexandria, Origen, and Marcion. And in their case, they didn't get these ideas from the Mesopotamian stories. They got it from Plato. You see, 400 years before Jesus, Plato had already told the ancient world about the extraterrestrial beings who came and modified our ancestors. He called them children of God. He didn't say what they were or where they were from, only that they came and adapted our ancestors to give us a higher capacity for consciousness and intelligence. Plato also wrote about some other company in the universe. He talked about others who are more advanced than we are. He said they live longer, they are more intelligent than us, and they have an advanced knowledge of outer space. And he said they live on islands in the sky. On top of all that, Plato revealed that the Earth is a globe floating in space, which every so often gets blasted by movement of objects in space, triggering extinction-level events. That's why, he said, we are not the first civilization on this planet. Every few thousand years or so, something happens to take us down to a virtual zero to start again. Now, those church fathers I mentioned, who were strongly into Plato, knew everything he taught about ET interventions and past civilizations, and they had no problem endorsing Plato in the strongest terms. So that put all those topics on the table and made them part of the mainstream conversation in early Christianity. So, I am not the first on this territory. I am bringing back to the table things that in the beginning were part of mainstream conversation and should be today. I can feel my heart rate returning to normal, and although feeling a bit colder than I would prefer, I'm beginning to get my groove on. I hope I'm not sounding too bullish. Talking about extraterrestrials is quite enough on its own to make people take a step back or get defensive. I am well aware that a hearer will automatically question the sanity of any speaker who trespasses into ET territory. I can't take offense at that because it's been a challenging change of mind for me in the last few years. It's a big ask to expect people to take that turn with me in the space of a 2-hour interview. Before I made that turn, I lived and worked for 33 years in the world of Christian ministry. For much of that time, I worked as a kind of church doctor. Like many in that field, I had my fair share of paranormal experiences. Somehow, though, I was always able to interpret any anomalous encounters as divine, human, demonic, or psychiatric. Those were my boxes, and everything I ever encountered, one way or another, could fit into one of those boxes. Somehow, my theology had never really found a place for other kinds of entity or other intelligent life in the universe. So it was a revelation for me to realize that our ancestors embraced far more subtle thinking on these questions than I had ever imagined. But Paul, if in the distant past our ancestors knew about ET entities, how did all that knowledge get forgotten? It's a good question. It would seem a big thing to forget. So as swiftly as I can, I lay out the dot point version of the answer. Dot 1. In the Ten Commandments, it was commanded out of Judaism. Dot 2. In the 6th century BCE, it was edited out of the Hebrew Scriptures. Dot 3. In the 1st and 2nd century CE, it was excommunicated out of the early church. Dot 4. It was illegalized from the Roman Empire by Emperor Theodosius in 381 CE and buried in the caves of the Nag Hammadi desert to protect it from obliteration. Dot 5. In the 15th century, it was confiscated and burned out of the libraries of Central and South America by the Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors. Dot 6. In the 16th century, its proponents were burned at the stake by the Roman Catholic Church. And Dot 7. In more recent times, President Truman suppressed it when he signed the National Security Act of 1947, and that policy of suppression has continued unabated right up until last year when a number of cats got let out of the bag by the U.S. Department of Defense. So, Jay, to answer your question, you're right. There has been a lot of forgetting, and none of it by accident. I realize I have covered that ground rather quickly if you are not familiar with this history of forgetting. But don't worry, in the next few chapters, I will show you exactly how all that played out. I will also show you how a living memory of ET interventions has survived this history suppression in the form of indigenous memory, what we call folklore or mythology. When digging for what our ancestors knew that didn't make it onto the news, our world mythologies and ancestral narratives are the most vital source. It is in these grassroots stories, passed from one generation to the next, that our ancient memories survive. In the pages that follow, I will share with you my various notes on the subject, and you will hear some stunning examples of prehistoric memory surfacing and resurfacing in cultures all around the world. So, Paul, after 33 years in ministry, you have boldly gone where few pastors have gone before. You must have ruffled a few feathers along the way. How many colleagues and friends have you lost through putting this material out there? This is another good question. The fact is, I have lost a small number. Honestly, though, as I have begun getting out there on George Norrie's Coast to Coast, Sean Stone's Buzzsaw 2020, and countless other interview shows and podcasts, what has amazed me more than anything is the constant stream of letters and emails and messages that come to me from all kinds of people, all desperately relieved to hear a calm voice speaking into the airwaves on the topic of ET contact, ancient and modern. From week to week, I hear from people of all ages and from every walk of life, scientists, engineers, nurses, teachers, police, defense personnel, researchers, therapists, and pastors. Often those who reach out to me have experienced phenomena they don't understand and can't fit into conventional categories. I hear stories of close encounters, sightings of craft, interactions with non-human entities, even abductions. What humbles me the most is when from time to time I hear mature men in their 60s saying something like this: I have told my wife, and I have spoken to the person who was with me when the encounter happened, and I haven't told another living, breathing soul in the 50 years since. That's how powerful the fear of shaming and ridicule can be. Yet all these decades after their experiences, my correspondents still need to find someone to talk to about it. They still need to process what it was that happened to them all those years ago. As I have listened, I have come to feel even more passionately about the importance of breaking the taboo surrounding these subjects. Surely we only impoverish our understanding of the universe if we embarrass into silence anybody with an anomalous experience to share. After all, the history of scientific discovery shows us that anomalies are our friends if we want to understand reality more accurately. We just need to be willing to put our prepackaged assumptions and beliefs back on the table for a moment and listen with an open ear to some accounts and experiences which may be puzzling, confronting, and hard to understand. So, Paul, why does this matter to you so much? Wouldn't you be better off to keep your head down and keep your speculations to yourself? What makes it important to you? Have you had some kind of close encounter yourself? If you had asked me this question only a few months ago, I would have simply said no. Now, having compared notes with so many experiencers, I can feel something rumbling away in the back of my mind. There's a restless memory itching to resurface. I just don't have a handle on it and find myself caught off guard by Tim's question. Doing my best to think on the spot, I stuttered my way through an answer. Whatever my own experience, I can say that, for whatever reason, I share a deep fellow feeling with all those who shared their stories with me. As Tim has correctly surmised, not all have welcomed my trespassing into this controversial topic. And yes, I may have lost a few friends. Commenting on the publication of Escaping from Eden, 2 of my comrades in ministry told me just recently, Paul, let's stay friends, but I won't be reading your book. Other friendships, which were previously free and easy, are perhaps not quite as free and easy as they were before. The fear of what has happened to Paul, or what if Paul undermines my faith, has kept some friends a degree more distant than in times past. Without a doubt, exploring ET territory can be somewhat isolating. With some at the fundamentalist end of the spectrum, there is absolutely no possibility of a calm conversation. For those in that milieu, I am a wolf in sheep's clothing. I am full of the pride of Lucifer, says one. Luring people to the pit of hell, says another. You need Jesus, man, comes one reply. Open your Bible and read it, idiot, comes another. Naturally, I want to defend myself. I want to tell my detractors, no, you're wrong about me. I have been a believer since I was 17. I have not only read the Bible through countless times, but I served for 15 years as a theological educator. I have trained pastors in the principles of hermeneutics, the principles of interpreting ancient texts, the Bible in particular. I want to reply that I have designed training programs for pastors, served as a troubleshooter for churches, and as an archdeacon in the Anglican Church in Australia. I really am a person of faith. For some, though, it is automatically impossible to acknowledge a person who accepts the possibility of ETs. Tony, my collaborator on the Fifth Kind TV, jokes that I should merchandise a t-shirt that says, I lost them at Sky People. So yes, Tim, I have to admit there is a cost to exploring this kind of territory, but I do it because it's my journey. I want to know the truth. We all do, Paul. And as an addictive writer, I just have to share that journey with others. I sign off from Tim and Jay's show, still sitting at the end of my bed in my bath towel. I think I did okay without my notes, which are still sitting undisturbed, patiently waiting for me in the other room. My hosts were right about how outlandish my claims sound on a first hearing, and generally, I am happy to take it nice and easy as I explain to anyone who's interested the steps that have taken me from the safe, predictable world of ministry and onto the world stage on such a controversial topic. When I published a book with the confronting subtitle, Does Genesis Teach That the Human Race Was Created by God or Engineered by ETs? I knew I was firmly nailing my colors to the mast. That ship has taken me a long way. In these pages, I will share with you something of the amazing voyage that has followed. Together, we will travel around the world to Greece, Argentina, England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, to Italy, America, Peru, Kenya, Ghana, South America, the Philippines, India, and Australia. We will sit at the feet of scientists and sages, scholars and saints to spur us on in our exploration. We will go to the Finsinkov Astrophysical Institute and the Al-Farabi Kazakh National University in Kazakhstan and learn of incredible findings in the world of DNA from world-class researcher Maxim Makulov. We will take some time on America's East and West Coast to hear from psychologists John Mack and Barbara Lamb. We will delve more deeply into the abduction narratives of ancient indigenous narratives in the company of Aboriginal elder Shane Mortimer. Hebrew scholar and translator for the Vatican, Mauro Biglino, will point us to key historic words which have been hidden and suppressed through centuries of questionable translation. In Argentina, we will meet filmmaker Alan Stivelman, and in America, the eminent UFOologist Richard Dolan. In the company of Anthony Barrett on the Fifth Kind TV, we will introduce ourselves to a body of deeply challenging contemporary research. With anthropologist Maria Skolton, we will see the evidence of a longer and more interesting story of civilization than the one you and I learned in school. And along the way, experiencers in Argentina, Ghana, America, and Australia will add their personal stories to encourage us on our journey together and spur us on to keep exploring. By the time you and I reach the end of our journey together, I am also hoping that the writer who first challenged me as an 11-year-old boy to ask bigger questions might make an appearance for a personal conversation. I wonder what more he might have learned in the decades since his story first intersected with me. I am talking about the author of Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Daniken. The White Rabbits, who will meet us in the next chapter and lead us into this incredible rabbit warren, are members of my own family. I will introduce you in the next chapter where we will descend the first dip of this roller coaster and, let me warn you, you will need to hold on to your hat. Before we accelerate down that first dip, I want to take a moment to thank you personally for picking up this book and agreeing to share this journey with me. It is my pleasure to have your company because, for me, as an addictive writer, it's about sharing the experience and putting into your hands the book I wish someone had given me many years ago. When I first set pen to paper to map out what I am now going to share with you, I actually had no idea what forgotten treasures would resurface in the process, least of all, buried in the depths of my own memory. And that was the introduction and chapter 1. Peace and blessings to you all.